Hi, I'm Jenny Kawaja, and I'm here today to talk to you about gluten-free baking and share a few of my favorite recipes. I recently started a blog called Kitchens and Trails to catalog my baking adventure, hiking too, two of my favorite things. Before I get started, I wanted to say a quick thank you to my dear friend Matt Murray, who invited me into the Purcell Murray showroom today. It has been such a treat to bake on these gorgeous appliances, and I'm thrilled to be able to share some of my recipes with you via video. I was introduced to the gluten-free lifestyle 4 years ago by my daughter's pediatrician. Since then, we have converted our kitchen to a gluten-free kitchen, and we have all adopted a gluten-free lifestyle. We feel amazing. Now, I love to bake, but my relationship with gluten-free baking has not been quite as love-filled. We all know what I'm talking about, those dry, gritty, cardboardy, hard, crumbly treats. Well, that was my story too. And recently, I decided to put my mind to baking, to gluten-free baking, and I'm here to share my adventure with you. Now, the thing with gluten issues is that you need to start reading labels like crazy. For me, what this has meant is I've become much more health conscious, and that's reflected in my baking. I create recipes that are low in sugar, or sugar conscious, not no sugar, this is baking after all, using a variety of flours, and that's for nutritional diversity and also flavor depth. And also, I don't use any gums, so no guar gum and no xanthan gum. I also try to find products that are organic, fair trade, and non-GMO. With gluten-free baking for somebody who has celiac disease, it's also a step further. You need to check your labels for gluten-free certification. Many of the flours and products that are common in baking are not actually certified gluten-free. The first recipe that I'm going to do today is a gluten-free shortbread. It's one of my favorite recipes because it's easy, delicious, and it needs to be done a few days in advance, so it is great for entertaining. So for example, if you're hosting a party on Saturday night, this recipe really needs to be started on Wednesday. Pull the recipe together on Wednesday, bake it on Thursday, and then store it for 2 days and serve on Saturday night. Nothing to do on the day of entertaining. So to start with this recipe, we're going to melt 100 grams of butter. Once the butter has melted and cooled, transfer it to your mixing bowl, and then you can add your 60 grams of sugar. Set the mixer on low speed, and the key with this recipe is to mix on low speed. You do not want airy shortbread. So set the mixer to low speed and let it go for a minute while you're pulling together the dry ingredients. Measure out your dry ingredients, add the salt and the nutmeg, and then add it into the butter and sugar. Set the mixer again for about a minute and prepare your egg. Now this recipe calls for 1 egg yolk. Save your egg whites. They freeze beautifully and they can make so many delicious treats later. After the flour is incorporated with the butter and sugar, add your egg yolk and your vanilla and let the mixer go for 1 more minute. Then you can add your 35 grams of dried cranberries. Once your recipe is pulled together, you can transfer it to your tart pan. So the key to this recipe is rest and hydration. Once it's in its tart pan, it needs to be refrigerated overnight. That helps pull all of the flours together and allow the moisture to set into the flour. Then you're going to bake this recipe not once, but twice. The first will be in its tart pan, and the second time, after allowing it to cool for about 10 to 15 minutes, you'll slice it up, and the second time will be on a half-sheet tray. It's really going to play in your favor to develop that crisp, buttery, delicious shortbread cookie that you'll need to wait 2 days for. So with the shortbread recipe, one of the things to remember is to cut your shortbread after the first bake relatively quickly while it's still warm. Otherwise, you can end up with a little bit of crumble like you saw with me today. So the next recipe that we're going to do is a molasses cookie, a perfect fall treat. For this recipe, we're using oat flour and buckwheat flour. Now, I just wanted to say a quick thing on oat flour. Oat flour is one of those tricky gluten-free ingredients. Oats can be easily contaminated either on the field or in manufacturing plants. And so many oat flours are actually not certified gluten-free. So definitely make sure to check your labels and look for a certified gluten-free like this one. To start, we're going to cream the butter and sugar. While the butter and sugar are creaming, you can measure out your dry ingredients. Add your spices, your baking soda, and some salt. Once the butter and sugar are nicely creamed, when the mixture is light and fluffy, you want to add your molasses and egg yolk. Save your egg whites, they freeze beautifully. As soon as the molasses and egg are incorporated, you can add your dry ingredients. Mix it for about 1 minute after the dry ingredients have been added, and then your dough is ready to be covered with plastic wrap and refrigerated. To bake these cookies, set your oven to 350 degrees on a regular bake or 325 for a convection bake, and line your half sheet with parchment paper. This is going to help produce a chewy and crispy cookie.